sometimes I don't get a reply. Sometimes I text and I don't get a text back. And I need to be aware that putting a child up for adoption is really rough. But my parents also kind of prepared me for that I can have whatever reaction and feeling I want, but they're also allowed to do the same. And some days it might just be too hard to text back or too hard to see a photo. I don't know the emotions that go through them, but just giving them that grace because I was able to be given it as well.
Welcome to Transforming the Toddler Years, a Core 4 parenting podcast for conscious, cycle-breaking parents ready to turn toddler tantrums into teachable moments. Hi, I'm Cara Tyrrell, a lifetime lover of littles, mom to 2 grown and flown girls, and an early childhood educator. Through the show, I teach you my collaborative parenting methodology for nurturing your little human's mind, body, and spirit. Because how you connect and collaborate in the first 5 years is how you raise happy, healthy kids who grow into the best version of themselves and find true success in school and life. Welcome back, Toddler Tribe. Today's guest is pretty special. Sasha Saidman is here. She's a dynamic children's author from the Washington, D.C. area where she lives with her amazing husband and her 2 kiddos. She's here to share her story of adoption and an open adoption that allowed her to really own and know who she was her entire life and has led her to write a book about it called First Day. Her philosophy is that life is just something that should be filled with joy. And her narratives encourage young readers to embrace change and pursue their personal happiness. At the heart of Sasha's work is her belief in the power of stories to inspire and uplift, making her many books a source of hope and excitement for the future. This interview left me feeling so calm and so grounded and kind of ready to take on the world. I hope it has the exact same effect for you. Sasha, welcome to the show. Really excited to explore your parenting journey today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this a lot.
So you have a really interesting journey, not just as a parent, but your childhood journey was really unique. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I am adopted, and I was adopted from birth in a really wonderful open adoption. My parents were a bit older when they decided to have children, and they were told to reach out to friends, family, loved ones, and let them know they were looking for a baby. And I had an aunt who said, I have this friend who's a couple months pregnant with a girl and is looking for an open adoption. And my family, from what I understand, flew down to Florida and met at an Olive Garden and met my birth mother and my biological sister. And my mom went back to the hotel room that night and told my dad that she wanted that baby.
Wow.
And they spent the last month of pregnancy with my birth mother, and my mom was in the delivery room and was actually the first one to hold me. And I was raised with a really clear awareness of my birth family. I myself had a book called Tell Me Again About the Night You Were Born. And it was about a mom and a dad who flew on a plane and picked up a baby from a hospital. And she was never in mommy's tummy. She was in this specific person's tummy. And I really cherished that story. And it really made adoption just a very normal thing in my life. I don't remember ever being sat down and told I was adopted. I just remember that it was common knowledge. So really writing my most recent book, First Day, I really want to support that in other families. And just having that open communication, not only with your own children, but even just friends and family. And if your family's welcoming an adopted baby, helping you explain that to the other little ones in your life. And it just being a very normal thing. I was told multiple times in my youth and adolescence, whenever I would see a therapist or be going through a hard time, that because I was adopted, I must have attachment issues. I must have abandonment issues because of this big thing that happened. And I had none. That was not one of those things. I text my birth family regularly. My birth mother recently received the book and absolutely loved it. And it was just such a joy that she got to share that with me and that I have that relationship. And I remember later on in my youth, I maybe was 12 or 13, on Mother's Day, I was in the kitchen with my mom and she said, let's call your birth mother. And she called her and she said, our daughter is so good. And I just remember this like warmth. And I just knew that I never had to choose. And I feel so lucky that I had that wisdom and that awareness from such a young age that I never felt like I had to choose between families or pieces of myself. And I always had the support of my adoptive family.
Wow. What a beautiful story, Sasha. Just that permission piece. And when you were talking and just shared that, I heard that plural pronoun, right? That our daughter. That just makes you feel doubly loved and doubly wanted in every way. And I love that open communication space. Was there a time when you said that you have struggled with dyslexia? So was it really powerful for you when you got a diagnosis to be able to go track some medical history, perhaps, that your adopted parents wouldn't have had access to?
Oh, definitely. I don't know about specific diagnoses in my birth family, but I know that my birth mother and sister are extremely creative, and they have, I believe, a lot of the signs and symptoms of dyslexia and learning disability. So I think having that as a background that I could talk about was really big. And I think in general, I've gone to them for medical things. I've gone to them for pregnancy advice. It's been really great. And I was able to share that with friends. And I think that was also really powerful that I had that. And I ended up getting a lot of friendships involved adoption, and we got to share our stories, and they also helped me with the journey of writing this book.
You know, chosen family is extremely special, and we all have the ability to add to our family by choosing people we really resonate with. And what a blessing that you had kind of that built-in umbrella right there for you. And you have taken it full circle. And I mean, you have many books that you've written, but this is the first one that's specifically about that journey.
Yes, it is. And it's something that I really wanted to do justice. And my mom, after adopting me, became an adoption agent. So I had a large number of resources to pull from, because my other books I'm writing from a parenting perspective, but I don't have that in adoption. So I wanted to make sure I was allowing for everyone's dialogue and everyone's story as much as possible to seep through. And so that's also partly why the cover is the way it is just adoption can happen at any age, any ethnicity, any gender. And so I really wanted to make sure that was incorporated in both the imagery and the language. So we never use mom or dad, or that is the specific family dynamic in the book. We use parent, and we use analogies for the journeys that the families go on. Because some, like my own, are simple. You fly to Florida, you meet a woman, and you adopt a baby a couple months later. And others are on waiting lists, and they're in books, and they're going to support groups, and they're reaching out online, and it's years and years of struggles and ups and downs. And I wanted to make sure that this book would help embody that for everyone, so it would feel authentic for more individuals and more adoptees.
Wow. How beautiful. So who's this book for? Is it for the parents? Is it for the kids, or both?
So I think it's for both. I think for me, I really wanted to be able to hear my story and my adoption story. And I think as a biological mother, I had baby books, and I would fill out my pregnancy, and I would fill out little details and my time in the hospital. And so I really wanted to incorporate that some way into something that I enjoyed, which was that book when I was a baby. So this incorporates the ability for families to fill in some of the specifics about their first day. And then it also allows at the end for them to write in their own story, so that they can have that fresh and have that as a keepsake for their baby. I think that children could even have more than one, where they might have it for their birth family as well as a keepsake. And then, like I said, also, I can read it to my own children and just very casually talk about how mommy was not in grandma's belly. I was in this person's belly, and they can get to know that idea at a very young age as a very normal talking point in our household, even though they're biologically my children.
Yeah. Normalizing this way that family develops, that's really, really powerful. In my world, my story is not adoption, but my parenting journey started with loss. And so normalizing grief and normalizing loss, and that it's part of our family story, but it's, it doesn't define everything as we move from phase to stage. So there was a lot of books and there was a lot of things that were not also out there. And I had to create my own because it was kind of like writing our own family's story.
Yeah, it was. And my parenting journey also started with loss. And that's something that I used social media to help cope with and connect with other parents and moms that were going through that, because it felt really isolating. My own family didn't even know it was going on at the time. And I don't really know why I felt that shame, but it was very deeply embedded initially. And I really don't want other moms to go through that. And so I think talking about it on any platform and every platform as it's normal and it happens and it's nothing you did. It's nature. It's something that can happen, and more women than you know go through it. It's 1 in 4, I believe, have a miscarriage, and 1 in 8 have multiple. So I think it's just really important to make sure that women don't feel alone and that it happens and it takes time sometimes and it's not just snap of the fingers.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so unpredictable, right? You can have a picture perfect pregnancy and then the second time around or the third time around find yourself struggling to conceive. So I'm so interested in your perspective on this as someone who had what seems like, if there is such a thing, kind of an idyllic or a picture perfect adoption experience. So, right, that has you all the way over on this side. Mm-hmm. Have you felt as when you reached motherhood stage that that's a gift that you want to give to another child simply because you know how to give it well, or the fact that you are able to conceive and have biological children of your own, that's enough for your family?
So I suffered from postpartum after my daughter. And so I know at this point in my life, I feel that I'm done biological. I feel like my body and my hormones are just, they have had it. My husband is partially adopted as well. So adoption has been something we spoke about. I think it would be something we maybe do later in life, whether it's fostering or adopting older children, or just opening our house to someone in need. I think it's something that's very much on the plate, and it's very much something that we feel that we could talk to them about as people who were raised by non-biological families, and that it's very normal. And I think it's something that I want to have my children be around, whether that's in helping out, whether that's in going to events that are with children of adoption and just speaking about it regularly.
That's amazing. Yeah. As a thank you for being a loyal listener to the show, I have a gift for you. Just click the link in the show notes and grab my new intentional language tool. 5 things your toddler needs to hear you say every day. Start incorporating them now into your daily exchanges and watch and listen as your child responds differently to you. Can you talk more? I have a lot of experience in connection with families who foster and then sometimes adopt those kids and sometimes don't. And so can you talk more about the identities around people when a foster child comes into a home, right? There's all of a sudden multiple moms if it's been multiple homes in a row. And how can we support, because you're great with the language piece in this book specifically, like how can we support kids to always feel loved, included, seen, even though their environment and their humans keep shifting?
I think there's a level of consistency that we can bring to the table, and I think that's choice. So I think for myself, at least, if I can put myself into those shoes, I would want some consistency of things that I enjoy. and I wouldn't want to feel like a stranger in the room that I was being placed in. So I think what I've seen online with a lot of foster families is they allow foster children to choose what their space looks like as much as possible. Bedding, toothbrush, even the little things that make it feel like theirs, and then allowing them to take those things place to place where they feel like they have some remnants of themselves and some identity. And I think that that empowers children to really be able to speak up. And so by not allowing children to be creative and really show themselves, we really create this idea of them and put them in a box. And so I think allowing them to break free of that and to give them that freedom and that space, no matter how many homes they're living in, to really allow them to do that will up their confidence and up their ability to speak up for themselves wherever they are, and let them know that they have advocates and teach them how to advocate for themselves, for those needs, make sure they know who their team is, no matter if that's changing or not, and just make sure they have those phone numbers, have those accessibility services, and that the parents, whoever they are at the time, or caretakers, are really aware of the situation and allowing for that growth within their home, where however long that might be.
That sounds like a beautiful place. I want to be there.
In an ideal world.
Right? I mean, this is what we have to work towards, though, because that system continues to need growth as well. I'm so curious. Do you think that your book, your first day book, could be a tool for those families, even if it's only a 6-month placement? This child has a story that continues to grow with them as they move.
Definitely. And it's so interesting you say that. I have a good friend. I met her through my husband's friend. And she worked with the social system and social working with children. And so when I was writing this book, I actually sent it to her multiple times to kind of get her view on it, to see if she thought it would fit within those bounds. Because I wanted it to not only be, adopted from a baby and you're in this family forever. I wanted to be part of it. And so allowing for that growth and that really broad statements and open communication and open language to allow for that to work in a foster type situation, to work in partial placements, to work in temporary placements, permanent placements, hopefully, and that the child could take it with them and they could have people add to their story as they go, but it's theirs.
That is beautiful. Yeah. Writing the story of them as they go. That's so fantastic. So what about the not ideal, right? A closed adoption, or maybe it is a foster to adopt, but the family has no more rights that are associated with the child, so they can't be in touch. And you've got a kid who is growing up and asking questions. How would you support that kiddo, knowing there are limitations to the outreach that you can do?
So that's very similar to my husband's story. He did not have much information, and the only advice or knowledge, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, would just be as honest as possible, because you can only give whatever information you have that day. So if you as an adoptive family, as a foster family, are comfortable speaking out, and I do think when it comes to adoption, there needs to be an awareness of you're getting another biological child that's separate from your own, and they may have questions, and they likely will. And so allowing for that to happen in a very organic way, where if the child has questions, doing as best as you can to give them the answers you do have, and then give them resources where they could be finding things, whether that's 23andMe, whether that's going to the adoption agency. I know when my mom was an adoption agent, one of the things that they allowed is that the adoption agency would have the information, and you would have the choice to send a letter, and the adoptive or the birth family may or may not reach back. They may or may not reply, and it may or may not be good information. But a lot of the time, that's how that first contact would be made, is through the agency. And a lot of even open adoptions are through an agency, where families send pictures every other year, they send letters, they send updates, but it's always through the agency. So a lot of the time the families actually don't have a direct connection like my own. So I would just say being honest, because for me, that was the biggest thing my family did. And I didn't have communication really with my birth father until I was an adult. And his family. And since then, they've been really welcoming, but it was definitely more of a rocky start with that side. And they had their reasons, they had their beliefs, and I'm really glad to be welcomed into it. But I think that it was much harder. And sometimes I don't get a reply. Sometimes I text and I don't get a text back. And I need to be aware that putting a child up for adoption is really rough. But my parents also kind of prepared me for that I can have whatever reaction and feeling I want, but they're also allowed to do the same. And some days it might just be too hard to text back or too hard to see a photo. I don't know the emotions that go through them, but just giving them that grace because I was able to be given it as well.
My goodness, Sasha, I know that I read that you have struggled and you're open about your struggle with mental health. And listening to you talk today, the level of self-awareness that I feel, like literally, we're on a screen, but I feel it rolling off you, and your ability to regulate your own emotions and then have perspective on other people's. You've done the big work. So when it comes to parenting your kids, the ones who are in your home all day, every day now, what has this whole journey done to what type of perspective has it given you for the tools and resources that you need to be with them every day?
Oh my goodness. If anyone can dysregulate me, it's them. And I wouldn't change it for the world, but oh my goodness. I think the one thing that I really got out of life is I got to live it. I got to live a lot of life before I had children. And I feel really lucky because now I really enjoy watching them live theirs. And I don't feel a whole lot of intense feelings of what I want for them or what I want them to do. I tell my mom sometimes, I just want them to be good people. Like, I don't care what you do. I was given some really great advice by a therapist who did DBT. And she said to live a life worth living. And that's going to be really different for each person. Some people want 10 kids. Some people want no kids. Some people want to marry a man, a woman, it's whatever. So I think taking that into motherhood has really meant a lot to me because that's what I want to give to my children. So allowing them to live that life, but really figure it out for themselves, but also just be honest with them and try and, be brutally honest at times. They're 3 and 1, but, not sugarcoating as much stuff, not pretending I didn't have a life before them, not pretending my husband didn't have a life, and really letting them see us live. And then they can really they can walk in our footsteps, they can walk next to us, they can run a mile ahead, but, just letting it happen. And I think that loss of control, I really fully let go when it came to motherhood because time, sleep, what you're eating, where you're going, it's, your toddlers are running your world. And so letting go of that, I think did help when it came to my adoption because my parents knew that they were getting a bag of something and they had no idea what it was, no idea what it was mixed with. And I did see them struggle and I saw them try figuring it out. And I was able to learn from that. And it's kind of the cliche of, you see what your parents did and then you change what you want to do and then you follow what you want to do. So I'm going to change a little and I'm going to follow a little. And then I'm sure when my children are grown up, if they want children, they'll do the same thing. They'll look at me and they'll say, well, I love that you did this, but I didn't love that. And it'll just be a journey for them at that point. And I'll get to watch and sit back and hopefully be a grandma one day.
Oh my, yes. You are speaking my language over here, and kind of the duality of letting go of any semblance of control, but not in a way that overwhelms, in a way that allows you to sit inside the acceptance that today is today, tomorrow is tomorrow, and each moment is just going to keep unfolding, and giving your kids the gift of that experience instead of working against this idea every day that there's a box we're supposed to fit in, but we never actually seem to.
Yeah, I think it's really great. I use an analogy for my son's party. I was like overwhelmed with all these activities that I really wanted to plan for this 2-hour birthday party for my 3-year-old. And it got closer and closer. And I'm like, why am I planning anything? They never do what I plan. They always jump on the trampoline or play tag or get toilet paper and run around the house, and they have a ball. And so this year I was like, we're not doing anything. We get a piñata. And it's a costume party. They're going to come in their costumes or not. And the parents are going to eat pizza. The kids will eat pizza when they want. And it was just like a giant play date. And I'm like, this is so much less stressful. This is so much fun for them. I'm not feeling overwhelmed by a time constraint. And it's for my 3-year-old. I mean, it's letting go of that control of like, I don't need to do, all of these different little things. They figure it out. They figured out activities and they had the greatest time. And the kids ate when they were hungry. It wasn't a full sit down thing. And it was just so much fun. And so it's like letting go. I really get to enjoy it a little bit more than stressing about those little details that really, in the grand scheme of things, my kid won't remember. They'll remember the party and the fun and the joy. They won't remember the hat or whatever they were wearing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the gift that you give those kids, because you had kids come over that weren't yours. So those little gaggle of humans were practicing interpersonal communication. They were problem solving. One was coming up with an idea. The other one had an idea. They had to figure out who's to do first. You sent those other kids home with some skills, Mama.
Oh, yeah. Yep. They figured out ladder climbing, going down the slide, taking turns, who was the captain of the ship. And it was great. And the moms got to sit back, hang out, sit under the sun in some 70-degree weather. And we weren't trying to wrangle a bunch of toddlers into doing something that we thought they wanted to do.
Amazing.
And I think that that's really powerful as even a human being is like, just because you think it's so doesn't mean it is. And so just because we think this is how it needs to be doesn't mean it's how it's going to be and doesn't mean it is how they want it to be. So I would love my son's room to be clean and spotless, but that's just not where my energy needs to be. There's going to be clothes, there's going to be dust, there's going to be dog hair.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, well, I mean, I can only imagine how the listeners are feeling as we wrap this up because I feel calmer. I feel like I could take on a whole bunch rest of my day with a great perspective. Thank you for your beautiful energy and your perspective and your wisdom and your books. So we've talked a great deal about First Day. You have other books that also tackle family dynamics and a personal disability. So with the dyslexia, so can you share how people can get to your website? Don't worry about how to spell it. It'll be in the show notes. But we really want people to go grab these resources and bring that calm communication and connection into their homes too.
Yeah, you can find all of my stuff at sashasaidman.com. And then basically all my social medias are under Sasha Saidman, including my TikTok, which is the Kowalskis.
I love that. We'll just throw a little one in there.
I know. It's my husband's last name, and I felt like I needed to be independent, have my own, keep my own.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing everything with us. We really appreciate you.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
For all of you out there in our toddler tribe, however you define your family, stay mindful and proactive until our next episode.